Russia, leave Ukraine or you reign now. Peace be with you too.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule.
So bees can count, they can recognize images of human faces, they can even learn tool use, simple tool use by observing each other.
The Mind of a Bee by Dr. Lars Chittka, vegetarian, part 1 of 2. Continue watching to find out more.
Be vegan. Make peace.
Have the pleasure of visiting St. Helena, the friendly residents may ask, "What you name?" which is the local patois phrase for "What's your name?" Cherished friends, I am Gillian. The faithful people of St. Helena pray that divine radiance fills you with jubilation every day. Welcome to The Mind of a Bee by Dr. Lars Chittka, vegetarian, part 1 of 2. Dr. Lars Chittka, vegetarian, is a professor in sensory and behavioural ecology at Queen Mary University of London, UK. He studies the behaviour, sensory systems, intelligence, communication, and psychology of bees. His book, The Mind of a Bee, published in 2022, is a rich and surprising exploration into the cognitive abilities of bees. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from Dr. Chittka as he shares his research with us. He begins by recalling his first interactions with honeybees during his undergraduate studies at the Free University of Berlin in Germany.
So I started working with them as an undergraduate student already, and I've never looked back. What has it done to me? So I think the gradual exploration of bees' psychology and the question of whether they're not just smart but also likely sentient creatures has had a very direct impact on my diet choice, for example. So it's only just 6-7 years ago that I started being vegetarian.
Dr. Chittka tells us about the remarkable cognitive abilities of bees.
It's been known for a long time that bees have good spatial memory. They obviously have a hive to which they must find their way back, even from 10 kilometers away. And we had also known that they have to learn the flowers that they visit. They have to learn the colors and the scents and the patterns to learn to predict what reward is in the flowers. But more recently, over the past few decades, we have discovered that bees' intelligence, the cognitive abilities, go much further than just the tasks that they encounter on a daily basis in nature. So bees can count, they can recognize images of human faces, they can even learn simple tool use by observing each other. And these are all abilities that I think just a few decades ago no one would have thought possible in an insect.
There are 211 countries and regions which have animal people protection laws,
Obey the law of your country. No more animal people slaughterhouses, no more hurting, no more murdering them to eat, to lab test, or for any reason at all. Be vegan, make peace, so be it.
We learn how bee intelligence has evolved over time.
We think that the early evolutionary origins of this intelligence lie in their spatial orientation, the fact that they had to, as opposed to many other insects, but also many other animals, had to have a very precise spatial memory for their home base. Because if a bee fails to find her way home, she'll die. She can't survive on her own. And also, of course, all her work efforts for the colony will be lost. And the vast majority of bee species are actually not the social ones that are probably the most familiar ones, like honeybees and bumblebees, but solitary bees. Many species of bees are solitary. So they're single mothers. They're invariably the females that build the house. And if these fail to find their way home, then all their offspring die. So there's a very strong selection pressure for a precise spatial memory, and that has to involve memorizing landmarks surrounding your home base, but also flying over long distances, many kilometers or miles, to food sources, which they also have to remember, of course, and to steer reliably between these different destinations. So that's something that certainly shaped their intelligence, their learning behavior. They have to be careful shoppers in the flower supermarket. That is, they have to be able to compare the advertising of different flower species and the quality of the rewards, the nectar and the pollen contained in the flowers. I would say that bees among the insects are certainly outstandingly intelligent. The wasps in many cases might be on a par with bees. They share, of course, the need for a good spatial memory. Some species of wasps, in fact, tend multiple nests in different locations at the same time. And they keep track of which ones they have provisioned, how recently, and so on. There are some wasp species that actually recognize other individuals in their colony individually. So among the wasps as well as the bees, I think we find outstandingly high levels of intelligence in comparison with other insect species.
Vegan is ahimsa, is non-violence. It will destroy the cruelty of war and animal people slaughtering. It will destroy ignorance in humans. Choose it now.
Appreciative viewers, let's thank the bees who beautify our planet. We'll be right back here on Supreme Master Television.
Peace for Ukraine or Ukraine now. Russia, just go home.
Welcome back to The Mind of a Bee by Dr. Lars, Chittka, vegetarian. Part 1 of 2. Dr. Chittka now talks about evidence that bees can recognize human faces.
We train bees to associate an image of a human face, a black and white photograph, with a sugar reward. And after the bees have landed in front of the correct photo a few times, we then present it with something like a crime witness test, where there are now multiple photos, but without a reward and in shuffled spatial positions. So the bee has to then find the correct face out of a choice of different others. And indeed, they're very good at that. So they'll find the correct face with about 80% probability, even if the faces are quite similar. So this means that at least it's plausible that bees might recognize an individual human being. The task is a bit more challenging with real humans than with photos, but it's certainly a plausible observation that many of these beekeepers have held, that indeed the bees might recognize the person who takes care of them. So the most likely cues are olfactory, so how a person smells, as well as, of course, visual cues. So these are used by bees in nature when they navigate and find useful food sources, and the same ones might also be used in a person recognition.
There are 211 countries and regions which have animal people protection laws. The Dominican Republic is one of them. Dominican Republic, Animal Protection and Responsible Tenure Law, Law 248-12. It is the obligation of the state to safeguard the rights of animal people and protect them against disrespect, neglect, abuse, and cruelty. Animal person abuse and poisonings will incur up to 1 year in prison or fines of up to 50 monthly minimum wages.
Obey the law of your country. No more animal people slaughterhouses. No more hurting. No more murdering them to eat, to lab test, or for any reason at all. Be vegan. Make peace. So be it.
Dr. Chittka mentioned that bees need to be understood as sentient beings, as individuals with unique memories, expectations, and rich perceptual and emotional experiences in the world.
We've researched the intelligence, the thinking capacity of bees for decades, and we find them to be uniquely intelligent in terms of problem-solving skills. A kind of eye-opening experience was when we tested whether bees can learn about predation threat. We simulated such predation attacks, briefly capturing a bee between two sponge pads. So there was no injury, but it was a simulation of an unsuccessful predation attempt where the bee gets away. And we wanted to know, can they learn to avoid the crab spiders? And indeed, they could learn that quite well. But for me, the remarkable thing was that the bees subsequently changed their whole demeanor. They would scan every flower excessively before landing on it. And the most surprising phenomenon was that the bees often displayed so-called false alarms. That is, they would scan a flower that was actually perfectly safe and then reject it as if they'd seen a ghost. They responded to a threat that they had basically conjured up from past experiences that wasn't actually on these flowers. And this, to us, looked like a kind of post-traumatic stress disorder in humans.
Furthermore, Dr. Lars Chittka and his team found that bees display optimism after a good experience and pessimism following something unpleasant.
Recently, we also asked whether bees display a kind of play behavior. So when we gave them little balls to entertain themselves with, they returned to them again and again. They even went out of their way to interact with these balls, even though there was no other reward present than the activity itself. We also found evidence that there are pain-like experiences in bees. So there's a whole spectrum of emotion-like states from good ones to not so good ones. So all of this points indeed to not just intelligence or the capacity to think, but also to feel.
Vegan, the true nutrition for adults and children.
Do bees know their own personal body dimensions?
People have tested whether when bees fly through gaps, whether they know how large they themselves are, which is something that humans have to acquire bit by bit. So you initially might, as a little kid, bump into the edges of a gap through which you walk. And it turns out that bees know their own correct body dimensions before flying through the gap, before deciding which gap to fly through. And if necessary, they'll actually angle their body in the correct kind of way to avoid a collision. But this can only be done by knowing how large are you relative to the gap. And the bees indeed seem to be able to have this awareness.
We thank Dr. Lars Chittka for sharing these fascinating findings with us. May the heavens bless the clever bees, for without them, nature would be so tragically bereft. For more information on The Mind of the Bee by Dr. Lars Chittka, vegetarian, please visit press.princeton.edu/books and search The Mind of a Bee.
The bad karma and other negative effects of flesh eating darkens one's vision of inner light, interfering with concentration and meditation. James Bean, vegan.
Dear viewers, thank you for being with us. Join us again on Saturday, August 19th for The Mind of a Bee by Dr. Lars Chittka, vegetarian, part 2 of 2. Up next is Heartwarming Animal Person Adoption Stories, part 2 of 2, here on Supreme Master Television. May the benevolent sun bring you comfort and remind you of the divine daily.
Be vegan, make peace, do good deeds, hell not reach.
We pray for Ukraine or Ukraine.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/UL.
Nos programmes offrent plusieurs langues. Veuillez visiter suprememastertv.com/schedule et suprememastertv.com/UL.
Nuestros programas ofrecen varios idiomas. Visiten suprememastertv.com/schedule y suprememastertv.com/UL.
برنامه‌های ما شامل زبان‌های بسیاری است. از این وبسایت‌ها دیدن فرمایید: suprememastertv.com/schedule و suprememastertv.com/UL.